Have you ever seen something so ingeniously designed that it feels alive, yet it's entirely man-made? What if I told you the evolution of a walking machine on a beach has more in common with a beloved game about evolving creatures than you'd expect? It all started in 1990 on the windswept beaches of the Netherlands. Theo Jansen, an artist and kinetic sculptor, envisioned a new form of life. Creatures that roamed the shores not to survive, but to thrive against the elements. These weren't animals. They weren't machines in the conventional sense either. He called them Strandbeests, or beach animals. At the same time, a cultural phenomenon was brewing in Japan. A young man named Satoshi Tajiri spent his days collecting bugs in fields near his home. But urbanization was quickly replacing nature with concrete, and those fields disappeared. Determined to preserve the joy of collecting and evolving creatures, Tajiri laid the foundation for what would become Pokémon. Two vastly different worlds, one focused on engineering lifelike movement, the other on capturing the magic of imaginary creatures, were about to intersect in a way no one could have predicted. Jansen faced an uphill battle. His creations, made from humble materials like PVC pipes and recycled bottles, needed to withstand the harsh, salty winds of the beach. Each prototype stumbled and failed. Some couldn't even stand. Others broke under the weight of their own complexity. Meanwhile, Tajiri's Pokémon idea was met with skepticism. How could anyone turn a childhood hobby into a video game that would resonate globally? The limitations of 1990s technology made designing hundreds of unique creatures and their evolutionary paths an almost insurmountable challenge. For both creators, the hurdles weren't just technical, they were emotional. There were doubts, rejections, and moments when giving up seemed like the only option. Jansen faced an uphill battle. His creations, made from humble materials like PVC pipes and recycled bottles, needed to withstand the harsh, salty winds of the beach. Each prototype stumbled and failed. Some couldn't even stand. Others broke under the weight of their own complexity. Meanwhile, Tajiri's Pokémon idea was met with skepticism. How could anyone turn a childhood hobby into a video game that would resonate globally? The limitations of 1990s technology made designing hundreds of unique creatures and their evolutionary paths an almost insurmountable challenge. For both creators, the hurdles weren't just technical, they were emotional. There were doubts, rejections, and moments when giving up seemed like the only option. But then, everything changed. For Jansen, a breakthrough came when he developed a system of algorithms, his genetic code, that allowed his Strandbeests to evolve, improving their stability and movement over generations of experimentation. Suddenly, the creations began to walk with eerie grace, powered only by the wind. For Tajiri, the key moment came when he partnered with Nintendo. With their resources and the addition of the iconic trading mechanic, Pokémon Red and Green were born. This turned a simple collecting game into a social phenomenon. Both creators realized they didn't have to mimic life perfectly. They just needed to capture its essence. Imagine watching a Strandbeest glide across the sand, its legs moving in a mesmerizing dance, driven only by the wind. Or think about the moment when your Charmander evolves into Charizard, a feeling of accomplishment, growth, and awe. What makes these creations so captivating? Is it their ingenuity, their ability to inspire, or something deeper? Could the concept of evolution itself be the common thread between Jansen's art and Tajiri's game? The impact of their work is profound. Jansen's Strandbeests have become more than just art. They're a symbol of the intersection between engineering and creativity, inspiring artists, scientists, and engineers around the world. Meanwhile, for Theo Jansen, success was not the result of a single epiphany, but rather the culmination of decades of meticulous experimentation. He started with a simple idea: create machines that could move on their own, using nothing but wind power. The early iterations of his Strandbeests were crude and fragile. They could barely stand, let alone walk. However, Jansen was undeterred. He approached the problem scientifically, breaking down the biomechanics of movement into its core components. Jansen studied the way animals walked, how their legs bent, the angles at which they moved, and the rhythm required to propel their bodies forward. But instead of trying to replicate muscle and sinew, he sought to translate these organic movements into something mechanical. The solution came in the form of a leg ratio, a mathematical formula he developed to determine the exact proportions and angles needed for his Strandbeest's legs to walk smoothly. This formula, which he called the genetic code of his creations, became the cornerstone of his work. Over time, his Strandbeest became more sophisticated. Early models were little more than frameworks of PVC pipes, wobbling clumsily across the sand. But with each iteration, Jansen refined his designs, adding new features to help the creatures adapt to their environment. Some Strandbeests were equipped with stomachs, made from recycled plastic bottles that could store compressed air. This allowed them to keep moving even when the wind died down. Others had sensors made from tubing and flaps that could detect changes in wind direction or the presence of water. When a Strandbeest sensed it was too close to the ocean, it would automatically reverse direction to avoid being swept away. These advancements weren't just technical achievements. They were a testament to Jansen's philosophy that his creations were, in a sense, alive. He saw himself as a kind of evolutionary force, guiding the development of his Strandbeest through a process of trial and error. Each failure was an opportunity to learn, to tweak the genetic code, and to bring his creations one step closer to perfection. It was evolution in action, played out not over millennia but over decades, in a workshop filled with PVC pipes and a visionary determination to bring his dream to life. On the other side of the world, Satoshi Tajiri's journey was unfolding in a completely different way, yet it echoed the same themes of persistence, innovation, and the pursuit of a seemingly impossible dream. As a child, Tajiri was obsessed with collecting insects, spending hours exploring fields and streams near his home in Japan. But as urbanization transformed his hometown into a sprawling concrete jungle, those fields disappeared, and with them, the joy of discovery. Tajiri was determined to find a way to preserve that experience, not just for himself, but for others who might never have the chance to roam the wild in search of hidden treasures. This desire led him to the idea of Pokémon, a game that would allow players to collect, trade, and battle creatures in a virtual world. But turning this idea into reality was no small feat. Tajiri's company, Game Freak, was a small, scrappy operation with limited resources. The team worked tirelessly, often sleeping in the office as they tried to bring Tajiri's vision to life. The concept of evolution became a central mechanic in the game, reflecting not just the natural progression of creatures in the wild, but also the personal growth players could experience through their journey. Pokémon were designed to grow and change as players cared for them, a perfect metaphor for overcoming challenges and achieving goals. Each Pokémon was meticulously crafted to feel unique, with its own personality, abilities, and evolutionary path. This was no easy task, especially given the technological limitations of the 1990s. The team had to work within the constraints of the Game Boy's hardware, which meant every pixel and byte of data had to be used efficiently. Despite these challenges, Tajiri and his team managed to create a world that felt vibrant and alive, filled with hundreds of creatures that players could connect with on a personal level. One of the game's most groundbreaking features was the ability to trade Pokémon with other players using a link cable. This turned Pokémon from a solitary experience into a social one, encouraging players to interact, collaborate, and share their progress. It was a risky move, but it paid off. The sense of community it fostered became one of the defining aspects of the franchise, setting it apart from other games of its time. Both Jansen's Strandbeests and Tajiri's Pokémon teach us that progress isn't linear. For Jansen, it was a matter of refining his designs through countless iterations, learning from each failure and pushing the boundaries of what his creations could do. For Tajiri, it was about building a world that captured the magic of discovery, even in the face of technological and financial challenges. Their stories remind us that innovation is a process, not a destination. A journey filled with setbacks, breakthroughs, and moments of sheer inspiration. In many ways, the evolution of Strandbeests and Pokémon parallels the natural world. Just as organisms adapt to their environment through the slow, steady process of evolution, both Jansen and Tajiri approach their creations as living systems, constantly adapting and improving. Jansen's Strandbeests evolved to navigate the harsh conditions of the beach, while Tajiri's Pokémon evolved to resonate with players across cultures and generations. Each step forward, no matter how small, brought them closer to their ultimate Pokémon has grown into a global phenomenon, with millions of fans who continue to find joy in collecting, battling, and evolving their favorite creatures. At their core, both stories are about the power of persistence and the beauty of evolution. Whether it's the slow, deliberate process of perfecting a walking machine or the dynamic, ever-changing world of a game that has captured the hearts of millions. They remind us that failure isn't the end. It's just a step along the path to something greater. And in that sense, we're all evolving, one small, consistent step at a time. But this was just the beginning. While Jansen's Strandbeests continued to evolve, inspiring engineers and artists alike, Pokémon exploded into a cultural juggernaut, touching millions of lives. Yet, both stories ask the same question. What's next? How do we push the boundaries of what we think is possible? Realization that sparked change. For Jansen, it was the decision to treat his creations as evolving organisms. For Tajiri, it was the realization that connecting players would make Pokémon unforgettable. Actions taken to overcome challenges. Jansen refined his designs through trial and error, while Tajiri embraced collaboration and innovation. Ultimate impact. Strandbeests have become a symbol of art meets engineering, while Pokémon remains one of the most successful franchises in history. By focusing on their visions and adapting with each challenge, both creators achieved what once seemed impossible. And the best part? This isn't just about Strandbeests or Pokémon. It's about the power of evolution, creativity, and persistence. So, what will you create? Because whether it's a walking machine or a game-changing idea, the potential is infinite.